The endless hum of the galactic archives was the closest thing the universe had to silence. 1,000 floors deep beneath the capital spire of Coro Prime, data streams pulsed like veins of light, whispering secrets from a million civilizations. Somewhere between the soft drone of the preservation drones and the rhythmic click of neural interfaces, Zakari Venn sat slumped over his desk, staring at a glowing holographic document that should not, by any rational measure, exist. The display shimmered in a faint blue haze, projecting a cascade of alien glyphs across his scaled face. Each one pulsed with the unmistakable stamp of Omega classification, the highest level of secrecy in the Galactic Council. Even touching it without proper clearance could earn a life sentence on one of the cold moons of Threxos 9. But Zakari wasn't thinking about punishment. He was thinking about the name. Ambassador Marcus Vale, Human Diplomatic Corps. He whispered it again, as if the words themselves might rearrange into something sensible. A human name. A file claiming to be 10,000 years old impossible. The humans were new, barely 3 centuries in the Council. A young reckless species with a short attention span and a strange affection for caffeine. Their homeworld, Earth, had been admitted as a provisional member only after decades of debate. To suggest they had been here, in the archives, 10,000 years ago was not just absurd. It was heretical. Zakari's 3 fingers hovered over the projection. He hesitated, then tapped to expand the metadata. The file's encryption unraveled in slow motion, layers of security shedding like petals. The deeper he went, the older the code became, using syntax and linguistic structures unseen since before the era of union. His secondary eyes flicked upward as lines of ancient script scrolled past. His primary heart thudded faster. A voice echoed from behind him. "Still working past cycle 12 again, Zach?" Zakari turned sharply. His colleague, Themos, glided into the room, or rather oozed. The Galarian species were gelatinous beings of translucent blue matter, their forms constantly shifting. Thymos had stabilized into a roughly humanoid shape for Zakari's comfort, though his eyes still floated lazily inside his gel-like head. "Working," Zakari muttered, "if that's what we're calling this." Thymos tilted his head, 6 pseudopods tapping simultaneously across multiple consoles. "You look like someone just told you gravity was optional." "Worse," Zakari said. He gestured toward the hologram. "Take a look." The Galarian leaned forward, his form refracting the light of the projection. For a long time, he didn't move. The pulsing blue reflection painted ghostly ripples across his fluid body. "Human," Thymos murmured finally. "Ambassador Marcus Vale. Year." "Wait, that's—" "No." He blinked, or tried to, a motion that rippled through his surface like a drop hitting water. "This timestamp predates the Council by at least 9 millennia. Zakari nodded slowly. "I checked twice. The metadata's authentic. The signature line is sealed with pre-union encryption. It's old, Thymos. Very old." The Galarian's body wavered with agitation, his outline blurring. This could be a fabrication, a recursive data ghost. Sometimes ancient sectors merge. "Not like this," Zakari interrupted. "Look at the integrity markers. This file hasn't been corrupted or cross-linked. It's clean." The two stood in silence, the air thick with the soft hum of the archive's servers. Around them, data streams shimmered like slow lightning across the vaulted chamber. It smelled faintly of ozone and dust, the scent of old machinery and older secrets. Zakari leaned closer to the hologram. The image within shifted, grainy footage, static crawling along the edges. A conference chamber appeared, circular and grand. 12 figures sat around a table carved of obsidian glass. Some were familiar. A Trion diplomat, a Veshkar admiral, even an early AI construct from the pre-sentience era. But at the head of the table sat a man, human, dark hair, streaked with gray. Skin weathered but calm, eyes sharp enough to command silence from entities that had ruled galaxies before his species learned to smelt iron. The recording stabilized just long enough for the man to speak. "Order," he said. The voice was steady, warm, and impossibly human. "Let us begin the 47th session of the Conquered Council." Then the feed cut out. Zakari stared at the fading hologram. His tail twitched involuntarily, a nervous tic from a species that had evolved in caves full of predators. "Tell me you saw that," he whispered. Thymos's form dimmed. "I saw it, and I wish I hadn't." For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, the faint hum of mag rails passing beneath the archive floor filled the silence, like the slow heartbeat of the planet itself. Zakari exhaled. How could this exist? Humans didn't even have space travel until a few centuries ago. Unless they did, Thymos said, his voice low, almost reverent. And someone erased it. Zakari frowned. That's not possible. Memory codices can't just be wiped without leaving quantum residue. The Galarian's voice rippled like water over stone. Unless the ones doing the erasing were the ones who built the archives. Zakari's gaze drifted back to the holographic image frozen mid-flicker. The man, Marcus Vale Knight, looked composed, almost amused. There was a weight in his expression, something that didn't belong to a primitive species fumbling through early hyperspace drives. He looked like someone who knew exactly what was going to happen, and how to stop it. I've seen a lot of fabrications, Thymos, Zakari said finally, but none that register at this depth. The system thinks this file belongs here. The Galarian's form darkened, his color shifting toward deep violet, a sign of unease. Then maybe it does. Zakari sat back, the chair creaking under his weight. He rubbed the base of his cranial ridge, a gesture of tired disbelief. Do you understand what this means? If this is real, if humans were part of the Council 10,000 years ago. He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Thymos did it for him. Then history is a lie. A sharp chill swept through the room as Zakari's interface pinged. The hologram flickered again. New text appeared at the bottom of the screen, glowing red, pulsing softly. Access log recorded unauthorized viewing detected protocol 9 Theta. Immediate reporting required. Zakari's heart stopped for a beat. It's locked us in, he said, voice tight. Thymos's limbs recoiled instinctively. They know? Someone does. Zakari's claws hovered over the console. If this is Omega classified, even viewing it triggers internal tracking. We've already broken 3 security layers. Then we erase it, Thymos said quickly. Pretend we never saw it. Zakari hesitated. His gaze lingered on the man in the projection. Marcus Vale, human diplomat, 10,000 years too old. For a reason he couldn't explain, Zakari felt as if the man were looking back at him. He reached for the console and whispered, No, we find out who he was. The hologram flickered again, briefly showing static, and then, for a split second, Vale's lips moved. 2 words escaped, distorted but unmistakable. Welcome back. The file snapped shut. The lights dimmed, and the archive fell completely silent. The air in the archive had changed. It was subtle at first, a faint vibration beneath the floor, a hum that didn't belong to any known machinery. Zakari noticed it before Thymos did. His senses were sharper, evolved for caves where predators hunted by sound. Now those instincts were whispering the same warning, you are being watched. He didn't say it aloud. The moment he acknowledged it, it would become real. Instead, he focused on the file's frozen hologram, still flickering faintly above his console like a candle in wind. The message had vanished, but the echo of Marcus Vale's voice still lingered in Zakari's mind. 2 words that refused to fade. Welcome back. Thymos finally broke the silence. Zach, we should leave this alone. His voice had softened, losing the humor it usually carried. Omega-class files are sealed for a reason. If the system knows we accessed one. Zakari turned his primary eyes toward him. The glow from the console reflected in the mirrored surface of his pupils. If the Council didn't want anyone to see this, they should have buried it deeper. The fact it's still here means someone wanted it found. Or someone wanted us caught, Thymos replied. Zakari ignored that. Pull the Council formation records from before the era of Union. I want to cross-check delegation names. If Vale was real, he'll appear in at least one entry. Thymos hesitated, his gelatinous form rippling with anxiety. You realize that's accessing restricted data within restricted data. That's like stealing from the thieves who already robbed the gods. Zakari smirked faintly. Then let's make it quick. Within seconds, the room filled with cascading holograms, hundreds of circular windows orbiting around them like translucent moons. Each one displayed the early archives, crumbling, glitching data fragments from the Council's founding. Most files were barely legible, corrupted by time or deliberately tampered with. But one name kept appearing in file after file across thousands of years. M. Vale, human delegate. Impossible, Thymos whispered. This one's dated 9,800 years before the Council Charter was even drafted. Zakari zoomed in, magnifying the record. It was a log of an emergency summit on the planet Orath 5, home of the Trian Empire, long extinct. The minutes were fragmented, but a few lines were clear. Ambassador Vale advises compromise on the Dralith resource dispute. Unanimous vote achieved. Hostilities cease within 6 cycles. Zakari felt the scales on his neck prickle. He didn't just attend, he said slowly. He led the negotiations. Tymos blinked, his body pulsing with pale blue light. So you're saying humans 10,000 years ago were mediating peace between empires that don't even exist anymore? Zakari nodded. And doing it successfully. They kept digging. Hour after hour, they dove through the digital ruins of history. Tymos created proxy shells to hide their trail. Zakari bypassed centuries-old firewalls written in dead programming languages. They found Vale again on Zephyr Delta, brokering trade treaties between rival planetary blocks. On Jiran Nye, advising the early AI collective on ethical independence. On Valor Prime, preventing the collapse of an entire star system's economy. Always the same man. The same calm face. The same impossible timestamp. At some point, Thymus whispered, "He doesn't age." Zakari froze. He hadn't noticed it until then, but it was true. Across 10 millennia of footage, the human looked exactly the same. Not older, not younger, unchanged. A chill crawled up Zakari's spine. "That's not possible," he said, though the words sounded hollow even to himself. Humans aren't long-lived. Their lifespan barely reaches 2 centuries with augmentation. Unless he isn't human, Thymus murmured. Zakari shot him a look. "You saw the footage. He's human." Then how? The room suddenly dimmed. The holograms around them flickered violently, glitching like a collapsing simulation. The archive lights turned crimson, casting the chamber in a blood-colored glow. Security override detected. Unregistered data pathways accessed. Investigation initiated. The voice was smooth, synthetic, the archive AI cold, inescapable. Thymus recoiled in panic. "They've traced us!" Zakari's claws danced across the console. "Not yet. I'm rerouting our signal through the deep archive nodes." He tapped faster, muttering to himself. Come on, come on." A dozen error codes flashed and vanished. The hum grew louder, the vibration beneath their feet more insistent. It wasn't just an alarm anymore. It was the sound of something waking up. Finally, Zakari slammed his hand on the console. The crimson light faded back to white. The warning tone ceased. Thymos exhaled, which for a Galarian meant releasing a faint hiss of vapor. "You rerouted the trace?" "Delayed it," Zakari said. "We've got maybe an hour before they find us. Then what?" Thymos demanded. "You want to get arrested, executed? Deleted from existence?" Zakari leaned back, staring at the dozens of floating holograms. Each one showed a different scene. Marcus Vale across eras, species, and galaxies. His voice echoed faintly across time, always calm, always precise. In one recording, he stood between 2 warring fleets, hands raised, speaking words that silenced thousands. In another, he laughed with crystalline beings who no longer had physical forms. "Thymos," Zakari said quietly. "This man wasn't just a diplomat. He was everywhere conflict existed, and he always resolved it." Thymos hesitated. "So what happened? Why did he stop?" "That's what we're going to find out." Zakari reached for one of the files, a sealed entry labeled the Concord Collapse, restricted level Sigma. The lock was ancient, protected by encryption that predated most civilizations. It required a code older than the Council itself. He hesitated, then remembered something. The last 2 words Vale had spoken before the file closed. "Welcome back," Zakari whispered them aloud, testing the sound. "Welcome back." The seal broke. The hologram expanded, revealing a data stream so bright it filled the room. Lines of alien symbols cascaded like rainfall. Then from the heart of the projection, a voice spoke. Not a recording this time, but a living transmission. "To those who find this file," it said, "you stand on the threshold of remembrance." The voice was Vale's. Thymos backed away, his fluid body trembling. "Zach, this isn't possible." The hologram shifted again. Images formed, planets burning, fleets collapsing, empires devoured by a black tide of light. A phrase echoed through the data. "The Devourers." 10,000 years ago, Vale continued. Humanity faced a truth the galaxy could not accept. Unity was an illusion. The Council was fragile. The Devourers were coming, Zakari's pulse thundered. Devourers? He muttered. What the void is he talking about? We offered them a choice, the voice went on. To stand together or to forget. They chose ignorance. So we erased ourselves from memory and began preparing alone. The hologram dimmed, leaving only the flicker of Vale's face. His gaze seemed to pierce the centuries between them. If you are hearing this, he said softly, it means the cycle is beginning again. The feed cut to black. Zakari stared at the empty space where the projection had been, his mind reeling. For the first time in his life, the data didn't make sense, and that terrified him more than any punishment. Thymos finally spoke, voice low and trembling. Zach, if this is real, then everything we know, everything, is a lie. Zakari didn't respond. He was still staring at the console, at the faint afterimage of the man's face. Marcus Vale, human, timeless, watching. Outside the archive, far above the planet's surface, a pulse of energy rippled through the galactic net, a silent signal that something ancient had just woken up. The archive was silent again, unnervingly so. The echo of Marcus Vale's message still hung in the air like a scent that refused to fade. Zakari stood motionless, claws hovering above the console, his heart pounding in his chest. He felt as though the floor beneath him wasn't metal anymore but a glass shell, one that could shatter with a single truth too heavy to bear. Thymos broke the silence first, his gelatinous body trembling in small waves. Zakari, he whispered, this isn't history, this is prophecy. No, Zakari said quietly, though his voice lacked conviction. This is classified reality. Something the Council didn't want remembered. He turned back to the console and summoned the file index again. The Omega archive shimmered, now unlocked in places where once there had been nothing but red seals. One title glowed brighter than the rest, the Great Silence Protocol. Thymos recoiled as if burned. No. That's restricted on a cosmic level. Even the Prime Curators aren't allowed to access it. Zakari glanced at him, the faintest spark of defiance in his eyes. And yet it's here, waiting for us. He tapped the projection. The hologram expanded outward, filling the room with rotating script, fractured holograms, and sound fragments from 1,000 voices. Some humanoid, others mechanical, others ancient beyond comprehension. The information was so dense that Thymos's form began to flicker under the overload. Zakari's mind reeled as translation matrices tried and failed to render the file into a coherent format. Then, all at once, the chaos aligned. The holograms merged into a single image, a massive council chamber, older than any Zakari had ever seen. The air shimmered with power. Around a circular dais sat beings of impossible forms, energy clusters, crystalline organisms, neural hives, and at the center of them all, one figure stood alone, Marcus Vale. He was human, ordinary in every visible way, but his presence commanded the attention of entities that could destroy worlds with a thought. His voice carried through the chamber, calm but resonant with something deeper than authority, something like sorrow. The vote has passed, Vale said. The silence will begin. A murmur rippled through the assembly. A creature of pure light pulsed angrily. You can't simply vanish. Humanity holds the stabilizing codes for 3 interspecies alliances. You keep our peace. Vale's expression softened. And that is the problem. He raised his hand, and a hologram bloomed above the chamber. Images of endless wars, species locked in cycles of conflict, and again, humans stepping in to mediate, repair, rebuild. Over time, the galaxy had grown complacent, relying on humanity's empathy and logic like a crutch. We have become your caretakers, Vale said. Not your equals. Every dispute you cannot solve, you summon us. Every crisis you cause, you expect us to fix. You've stopped evolving because we keep saving you. The light being hissed. You dare lecture the Council? Vale met its gaze without flinching. I don't lecture. I grieve. The recording flickered, jumping through moments like a broken memory. Humanity withdrawing embassies, closing consulates, shutting down communication nodes. Entire planets watching in disbelief as the humans, those strange, empathetic diplomats, simply stepped away. Then came the protocol. We will erase ourselves, Vale's voice echoed. Completely. From your histories, from your records, from your minds, the memory of humanity will remain only in the deepest layers of the archives, locked away until the galaxy proves it no longer needs saving. The chamber erupted in outrage. Some species begged them to stay. Others threatened retaliation. None of it mattered. The humans were already leaving. The hologram faded. The room returned to its dim white light. Sakari stood frozen. They chose to disappear, he murmured. Not out of fear, out of disappointment. Thymos's form trembled, his surface rippling with confusion. That's insane. Who erases their entire civilization just to teach others a lesson? Zachary didn't answer. He was staring at a small flashing icon on the console, an active data thread branching from the same archive file. It pulsed like a heartbeat. Without hesitation, he followed it. The hologram shifted again, this time showing a planet suspended in a void, a blue world shrouded in white clouds. Earth, the human homeworld, but not as it was known from modern records. This Earth was vibrant, alive and covered in structures of light that pulsed with energy. A colossal network encircled it like a crown made of stars. They didn't die, Zachary whispered. They transcended. The file deepened, showing fragments of text, ancient human transmissions, messages encoded for future civilizations. One line repeated again and again in every known galactic language. When the Devourers return, we will return with them. Thymos's voice quivered. So that's what Vale meant by the cycle beginning again. Zachary nodded slowly, the realization dawning on him like a sunrise too bright to face. They've been watching, waiting, preparing for 10,000 years. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts, a system alert. Security proximity 400 meters. Council enforcers inbound. Thymos panicked. They found us. Zach, we have to go! But Zachary wasn't listening. He was still staring at the image of Earth, spinning slowly in the holographic void. What if this was their plan all along? Not just to hide, but to see who would come looking. Zach, Thymos shouted. Move! He snapped out of it and slammed the hologram shut. The lights dimmed to their original hue. Together they bolted through the archive corridors, the sound of metallic footsteps echoing somewhere behind them. Zachari's mind raced as they ran. Every revelation burned through him like fire. The Council's history was a lie. Humanity's absence was intentional, and somewhere out there in the void, Marcus Vale still watched. They reached the central lift shaft. Thymos slammed a pseudopod against the control panel, and the platform began to rise, ascending through the archive's endless layers. Where now? Thymos demanded. To the deep core, Zachary replied. If the silence protocol is real, there's a central node, something that anchors it to the galactic network. If we can find it, we'll find out what the humans left behind. Thymos groaned. And if we get caught? Zachary glanced upward where the shaft opened into darkness. Then history gets buried again. As they rose, the hum returned. That same subtle vibration from earlier, stronger now, resonating through the structure like a heartbeat shared by something massive and unseen. The lift trembled. For a moment the air itself shimmered. A voice whispered through the static. Not from the speakers. From the air. You're not supposed to be here. Zachari's scales bristled. Who's there? The watchers are waking. The voice continued, calm and eerily familiar. You have opened the door. The sound vanished, leaving only silence. Thymos's eyes widened. Zachary, that voice. He didn't need to say it. Zachary already knew. It was Marcus Vale. The lift slowed, stopping at a level that wasn't on any blueprint. The doors opened onto a vast circular chamber, filled with ancient consoles and suspended stasis pods. Inside each pod floated a faint silhouette, humanoid in shape. By the void, Thymos whispered. Are those? Zachary stepped closer, breath shallow. Each pod bore the same insignia, a simple crest of a rising sun over a blue sphere. Humans, Zachary said. Sleeping, the truth settled in his mind like gravity. The humans hadn't vanished at all. They had been waiting here beneath the Council's feet for 10,000 years. The chamber smelled like frozen dust and ozone. Lights flickered softly across the curved walls, casting long, trembling shadows over the stasis pods. Zachary stepped forward, the click of his boots echoing like gunshots in the silence. His breath came shallow, caught between awe and disbelief. 1,000 questions warred in his mind, but one beat louder than the rest. Why hide here? Thymus oozed up beside him, his gelatinous form dimly glowing. Are they alive? He whispered. Zakari pressed a claw to the nearest pod. The glass hummed beneath his touch, and faint streams of data scrolled across the embedded interface. Vital signs, neural activity, deep sleep cycles. Alive, he said softly, but dormant. The pods are feeding them some kind of stasis energy. Look, this tech isn't council-made. It's something older. He followed the conduit lines across the floor. They converged at the far end of the chamber, where a circular platform rose from the ground. Its surface was etched with concentric rings of symbols. Zakari recognized none of them, not from any known language in the galactic register. The rings pulsed faintly like ripples in a pond. At their center, a tall figure stood waiting. It wasn't human. The being looked carved from light and stone, its translucent body shimmering with slow, deliberate movement. Two eyes burned like distant suns. When it spoke, its voice was layered, deep, echoing and resonant as though more than one mind spoke through it at once. Archivist Zakari, you have come far. Zakari froze. Who? What are you? The figure tilted its head. I am Valen, the observer. I was appointed by the last of the human ambassadors to guard what remains of their legacy. Thymos blurted out. Guard? You mean these sleeping humans? Velen's luminous gaze turned to him. No, you misunderstand. They are not sleeping. They are dreaming. Zakari frowned. Dreaming? For 10,000 years? Velen stepped forward. The floor responded to his motion, glowing in slow spirals beneath his feet. Their bodies rest, yes. But their minds... They walk the lattice. Zakari's claws twitched. The lattice? The hidden web, Velen said. A neural plane stretching between dimensions. The humans built it at the height of their power. A place to preserve consciousness, to think faster than time, to prepare for what was coming. Thymos let out a soft gurgle. Prepare for what? Velen raised one hand. A new hologram formed between them, the vast blackness speckled with dying stars. Out of it came a crawling distortion, a void that seemed to consume light itself. Every star it touched vanished. Entire constellations blinked out like dying candles. For this, Velen said quietly. The Devourers, Zakari's voice dropped. Vale mentioned them. Yes, Velen nodded. They have no name in any tongue that endures. They are entropy made flesh, things that feed not on matter but on meaning. They erase civilizations from existence, rewriting reality as though they never were. Humanity fought them once before the silence. The hologram shifted again, this time showing humans in impossible machines, weaving fields of blue energy, striking at titanic void creatures the size of worlds. But for every devourer destroyed, two more emerged. They realized, Velen continued, that direct war was futile, so they withdrew, hiding both themselves and their knowledge until the galaxy matured. They believed that one day others would learn unity, the one weapon the Devourers cannot unmake. Zakari's mind reeled. Unity, that's the humans' plan? To teach us. Cooperation. To teach you how to exist together, Velen corrected. The Devourers thrive on division. They consume chaos. When civilizations unite, their reality strengthens. Humanity understood this truth better than any species before or since. But your council... He gestured toward the ceiling, where the distant hum of the archive could be heard. They spent millennia arguing about borders and trade routes. Thymos drooped. We thought the council was peace. Valen's gaze softened. The council is stability, not peace. Humanity dreamed of something higher. But their dream became your bureaucracy. Zakari felt the words cut deep. He thought of the endless meetings, the protocols, the quiet compromises that defined his entire career. He had always believed the council represented the best of civilization. Now faced with the truth, it felt like a hollow echo. Why tell us this now? Zakari asked. Why break the silence? Velen looked toward the pods. The faint light within them brightened, pulsing in rhythm with his voice. Because the veil between worlds is thinning. The Devourers stir once more at the edge of the void, and the humans are waking. The word sent a shiver through Zakari's spine. Waking, as in returning? Velen nodded slowly. Their minds have been calling out through the lattice for decades. You felt it. Every unexplained anomaly, every distortion in council records, every inexplicable dream shared across species. Those were echoes of their preparation. The archive is not just a library, archivist. It is a relay. You opened the Omega file. You summoned them. Thymos began to panic, his form rippling violently. You mean we triggered the end of the galaxy? Velen's voice remained calm. No, you triggered its next chapter. Whether that chapter ends in survival or oblivion depends on what you do next. The chamber trembled slightly. From far above, the faint hum of engines echoed. Council Enforcer ships descending through the strata. Velen's gaze turned upward. They come to bury the truth again. Zakari looked between the pods, the glowing platform, and the ancient being before him. Then help us escape. Velen's eyes flared brighter. You do not escape truth, Archivist. You carry it. A pulse of energy rippled through the room. One of the pods opened with a hiss of steam. Inside, a human woman floated forward, eyes closed, hair drifting in the vapor. Her vitals spiked, and her chest rose with a breath that sounded like thunder in the stillness. Zakari stumbled backward. She's waking. Velen nodded once. The first to answer the call. Her name is Asha Vale, Marcus Vale's daughter, Thymos stammered. A descendant? But humans haven't. She never left, Velen interrupted. Her consciousness guided the dreams of her kind. Now she returns to guide yours, the woman's eyes opened. They were bright, ancient, and full of recognition. When she spoke, her voice carried an echo of countless others, the chorus of humanity itself. The time has come, she said. The galaxy must remember. Velen stepped back, bowing his luminous head. Welcome back, Asha of Earth. The pod lights flared one after another across the chamber. Dozens, then hundreds of sleeping humans began to stir, their pods glowing like stars. Zakari shielded his eyes as the light intensified, each pulse sending waves of data through the walls, through the archive, through the entire station, above them. Alarms blared as the Enforcer ships arrived, but their systems immediately began to fail. Circuits burned out, engines went dark, the air filled with the rising hum of an awakening species. Asha stepped out of her pod, barefoot on the glowing floor. She looked at Zakari, and in that moment he felt something impossible. The weight of 10,000 years of patience and power. Archivist Zakari, she said gently, you sought the truth. Now you must carry it to the stars. He couldn't speak. Every word died in his throat. All he could do was nod. Velen's voice reverberated again, softer now, almost kind. Go, the galaxy will soon know. The silence is broken. And as Zakari and Thymos fled through the corridor, light spilled behind them, pure and radiant, flooding the darkness of the archive. For the first time in millennia, humanity had awakened, and far out in the deep, where the stars bent and screamed, something else stirred in response. The corridors of the archive were no longer quiet. They sang. A low harmonic pulse rolled through the walls like the heartbeat of a world. Zakari and Thymos sprinted upward through the spiraling shafts, the light following them in waves. All around, holograms flickered to life. Human faces, old council transcripts, messages whispered across time. The archive was alive, breathing history back into the galaxy. When they emerged onto the upper deck, the sight took Zakari's breath away. The sky above the orbital station had changed. Threads of blue light stretched between the stars, connecting them in luminous veins. Space itself seemed to shimmer with awareness. Thymos stopped, awestruck. What is that? Zakari swallowed. The lattice, he said. They're reconnecting it. Before they could move, the floor beneath them vibrated. The ceiling split open and a column of golden light descended, wrapping them in warmth. From within that glow stepped a figure, calm, human, and impossibly familiar, Marcus Vale. He looked exactly as he had in the recordings, ageless, composed, wearing that same dark suit and that same expression halfway between kindness and command. His eyes were deep, not just in color but in time. Hello again, he said, his voice carrying with effortless authority. You've done well to reach this far. Zakari could barely speak. You're real, Vale smiled faintly. I'm what's left of real. A composite consciousness drawn from every iteration of myself across the lattice. The man who once was Marcus Vale died a long time ago, but humanity remembers in layers. Thymos made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. So you're a ghost? A teacher, Vale corrected gently. And a question. He turned toward the viewport. The stars flickered uneasily. Beyond the galactic rim, a patch of darkness was spreading. Not absence of light, but something worse, the erasure of it. Whole constellations were fading into nothing. The Devourers, Zakari whispered. They're here, Vale nodded. They were never gone. They lingered beyond perception, feeding on civilizations that never learned to see beyond themselves. The Council's wars, your bureaucracy, your forgetfulness, all symptoms of their influence. Entropy begins in the mind. Zakari clenched his fists. Then why wait 10,000 years? You could have stopped them before they reached us. Vale's gaze softened. Because power without maturity only repeats destruction. Humanity learned that the hard way. The silence was never punishment, it was incubation. The galaxy needed to grow, to fail, to remember what cooperation costs. He gestured toward the horizon, where the blue filaments brightened. Look, across space signals erupted. Entire worlds blinked with awakening awareness as the lattice reconnected them. Species long isolated were suddenly linked in streams of thought and empathy. Words turned into images, emotions into color. For the first time in history, the galaxy felt itself think. Thymos trembled. You're merging minds. Not merging, Vale said. Harmonizing. Each consciousness remains distinct, but the lattice aligns in tension. A choir, not a hive. That's how we survived the first Devourer War. It's the only way any of you will survive the next. Zakari stared into the light. And you expect the Council to accept this? They'll see it as invasion. Vale looked at him, one corner of his mouth lifting. Then perhaps the Council is the first to evolve, or the first to fall. A siren wailed somewhere deep within the station. Council enforcers burst into the corridor, their armor gleaming, weapons raised. By order of the Galactic Charter, the commander barked. Cease transmission immediately and surrender unauthorized technology. Vale didn't move. He simply looked at them. The enforcers froze, mid-step, their weapons suspended in air. The golden light spread around them like mist, and one by one their helmets retracted. Faces showed, confused, fearful, then calm. Vale spoke softly. You've all lost someone to war. To greed, to ignorance. You don't need orders to remember that pain. The commander's eyes filled with tears. He lowered his weapon. Around him, every soldier did the same. Vale turned back to Zakari. That is the real weapon. Memory. For a moment, silence reclaimed the deck. Peaceful, trembling silence filled with possibility. Then the station shuddered violently. The viewport darkened as something massive eclipsed the stars. The first Devourer had arrived. It was not a creature in any recognizable sense. It was distortion itself, a writhing wound in space that bled shadow. Where it moved, reality peeled away and the lattice flickered like a candle in wind. Thymos screamed. It's eating the network. Vale's expression hardened. Then the lesson begins. He raised his hand and light flared from his body, spreading into the void like a sunrise. From every awakened human pod across the galaxy, similar lights joined his. Thousands of radiant streams converging into one brilliant shield. The lattice vibrated, harmonizing to a single tone. Zakari felt it in his bones. The hum of a million minds aligning, not in fear, but in unity. The Devourer struck the barrier, and for a moment the universe itself seemed to scream. Then the impact froze. The darkness recoiled, disoriented. Vale's voice echoed through every mind on the network. Strength isn't survival. It's cooperation. Remember that. The Devourer twisted again, probing, searching for weakness. Small tears appeared in the shield. Zakari could feel the strain-like pressure behind his eyes. What do we do? He shouted. Vale looked at him. You choose. Zakari realized what he meant. The lattice responded to intention. It wasn't powered by machines but by minds. The archivist closed his eyes, reached inward, and thought not of fear but of connection. Of Thymos beside him, of the worlds he'd catalogued, of every being who'd ever dreamed of peace. Light surged through him. Thymos followed, his gelatinous form glowing until it was translucent crystal. Around the galaxy, billions joined. Minds linking, harmonizing, refusing to surrender to nothingness. The shield blazed white. The Devourer wailed, its edges unraveling, its existence collapsing under the pressure of unity. Then, with one final pulse of light, it was gone. The silence that followed was deeper than any sound. The stars returned, steady and bright. The lattice dimmed to a gentle glow. Zakari opened his eyes. The station floated quietly once more. Thymos slumped beside him, exhausted but alive. Vale stood near the viewport watching the restored stars. It's over, Zakari asked. For now, Vale said. Entropy never dies, and it only sleeps. But you have something it cannot consume. Zakari nodded slowly. Memory and choice, Vale added. He turned toward them, his form already flickering. Humanity will return fully when you no longer need us. Until then, the lattice is yours to keep. Thymos blinked. You're leaving again? Vale smiled, warm, tired, eternal. Teachers must let their students grow. His body dissolved into light, merging with the lattice one last time. The golden threads outside faded into the stars. In their place, calm settled, a fragile newborn peace. Zakari stood in the silence, feeling the hum of countless connected minds, all whispering the same vow. We remember. Thymos looked up. So, what now? Zakari exhaled slowly. Now we rebuild, together, and this time, we write history that no one dares to erase. He turned toward the vast window, where the galaxy stretched like an ocean of light, each star a voice newly awakened. Somewhere beyond, in the quiet folds of space, the memory of Marcus Vale lingered, a reminder that even in the darkest void, cooperation could rewrite the cosmos.